And today we're going to talk about setting yourself apart from your competitors through storytelling. And why does it matter what kind and how good of a story you tell? Well, as we know, local food and farmers markets and farm markets and agritourism operations, the number have been increasing across the state of Ohio. And so it's not necessarily we're going to talk about being better than your competitors, but we want you to be different from your competitors. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the best practices of storytelling. We'll give a little bit of information about how to implement that. We'll give a little bit of information on how to implement your story. We'll review some of the key points, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So why does storytelling matter? Well, storytelling has been around since really the dawn of time. Of course, before the written word, that was how people passed down um, traditions, and so forever. But again, when we talk about this storytelling, it's not really we're trying to be better than our competitors, although I do say you do need to have quality products, great activities if you have an agritourism operation. But part of what will dictate what type of story you tell is where you're positioned in the marketplace. And so when we talk about market position, it's things like, are you wanting to be the best value for the money? Are you want to being the highest quality option on the market? Or maybe you want to be more price competitive. All those things dictate, excuse me, where you're positioned in the model or in the market, excuse me. So another thing that you might think about, for example, is your agritourism operation. I have visited operations that really want to cater to those older teenagers and young adults. So we're talking 15, 16, up to 25 or so. And if we look at it at a agritourism operation like that, the one that comes to my mind is the haunted corn maze. And so those older teens and young adults get excited and have a good time being scared. And so that's one position in the market where there are other agritourism operations where they do want kids to come to their farm and have a great time, but they really focus on families and kids that are 13 and under. So when they have people come to their farm to visit, it's the family group. It's not just those young kids, somebody drops them off and leaves. No, you don't do that with your young kids. And so those two things really can set you apart from your competitors, knowing which of those customers you are serving. And so think about that. And then how can you delight your customers? We've all had bad experiences doing business. So that's the type of thing that usually gets spread around. So we want to make sure that we are doing what we can to delight our customers. And the only way you know what's going to delight your customer, excuse me, is knowing what your customer wants, knowing what they value. And so the more information you have about who your target customer is, the more effective you can be at serving those customers. And of course, they want to know that you're trustworthy, and that goes with businesses of all kinds. But storytelling can help you improve the trust that customers have with you and your business. And then what are the other aspects of your business that set you apart? Not just the activities that you offer to your target audience, but how you brand your business. Everything from the images you use, to the type of font you use, to what your logo looks like, to how your employees treat customers, all goes into setting the brand for your particular business. And of course, the one thing that's so great about storytelling is it can help bring customers on your business journey with you. And so we're going to dive right in here and talk a little bit more. So if you look at best practices for storytelling, there are 5 P's: the people, the place, the pictures or images, the platforms, and the personnel. And so we're going to talk through these as we move forward with this discussion. And so one of the things that we want to keep in mind, and this is based on a article that Dora was the author, and I have the link to that article at the end of this presentation. It's a great read, and I would encourage you to check it out. But she says, on a positive note, if storytelling is done correctly, it can evoke real emotions, inspire action, and foster loyalty. And of course, as business owners, those are the customers that we want. We want them to have that emotional tie with our products and services and farm. We want to inspire action. We want them to come and make purchases and come out and enjoy the fall with their family. And of course, we want them to be loyal because loyal customers typically are the ones that will market business for us. Very valuable to us. And she goes on to say that a well-crafted narrative can highlight your brand's uniqueness. Again, think about, do we want that older kid group and young adult group with the haunted hay rides or the haunted corn maze? Or are we looking for that younger demographic of the younger kids and families? Um, so highlight your brand's uniqueness, illustrate your company's journey, and ultimately enhance your brand's image. And so she's going to set this framework that's going to help us think about this storytelling delivery and how we can be effective with what we're doing. And so one of the first P's, of course, is the people. And the thing that we have to keep in mind is that every good story has a character or characters. And so you need to ask yourself in your operation, who are those central characters? Is it you? Is it your family? Is it your employees? Is it your customers? Or is it a variety of those? Now, keep in mind, the character of your operation is the one public facing. And so let's make sure that when we think about who in the family, maybe it's the entire family group, maybe it's just a one or two people within the family that serve as that character for our storytelling for our business. These characters also give your business a human face. Of course, people connect with people, not things necessarily. So the more connections you can make to your customers and potential customers, typically the better benefit that's going to have to your business. And then, of course, getting those characters or those people known adds authenticity to your brand. And so we want to think about again, who are the people or the person that we want to be the character for the story of our business. So the next P is place. And this is where the story happens. And I was reading a interesting article this morning, the storytelling about places, tourism marketing in a digital age. And I found it very interesting that there's a lot of research starting to be done in this. And if we stop and look about how many economies have transitioned from a production type economy more to a tourism type economy, that we really need to think then about place storytelling. And it goes on to say that enables strategic communications that supports sustainable competitive advantage. And so if we look at place, we're not just talking about our individual farm or business operation. How can we partner with others in our community to make sure that we're telling the same story about the place and raising each other up? And so, things that you can think about if you're wanting to tell the story of your place. Are you a multi generational farm? Maybe you've been on that same piece of land for 4 or 5 generations. Your customers would love to learn more about that. Where did your family come from? Why did they come there? What's the farm look like over the years? And why are you the one that's wanting to continue that operation? Maybe you're a first generation operator, and that's okay too. Um, People want why. Why, when there's some people choosing to get into production agriculture and agritourism, did you decide to take that path? Where did you come from? Is this a piece of property that's been in your family for a long time, but you and it are brand new to agriculture? Or maybe you've come from a different place. Why did you choose this particular farm or operation? And so, again, your customers would really love to know that information and be able to have that connection with you because that's really what we want to do. And again, engaging our customers and showing that authenticity goes a long way. The next P for best practices is pictures. And so I encourage you to build your photo library. You know, our smartphones right now, the cameras on them are pretty incredible. So it's not like you have to go out and spend a bunch of money on a sophisticated DSLR type camera. You've usually got one in your hand. And so start building that photo library if it makes sense, and I know a couple operations that have done this, is that they've hired a professional photographer to come out and take photographs of their operation during the 4 seasons of the year here in Ohio, of course, and then had access to some of those great images of their operation that they really want to highlight and share with their customers. When we talk about images, include your story's characters, you, your employees, your customers, whoever, again, those characters, those central characters in your story are. Make sure you include some of that in those images. I think people relate much better when there's a human being in an image than just product or open fields. While those are great and make us feel good, I think when we talk about storytelling, again, we're trying to make that human connection. And then the other thing that we want to do is be authentic. I've said that a bunch already. Um, and show the reality of your operation. You know, in farming, we know it's not always sunshine and good times. Sometimes it's no rain, like we've experienced. Sometimes it's too much rain, as we've also experienced. And so, share some of the challenges that go along with farming and agriculture so that we can again be authentic with our customers and that builds that trust. And then use images that invoke memories and emotional responses by your customers. And so what are things like that? We ran a pick you want excuse me we ran a pick you I can't even talk this evening. I apologize. We ran a pick your own operation for many years. And the thing that I found to be that emotional response was grandparents bringing grandkids to the farm to pick our products because they remembered doing it with their grandparents. And so it's that nostalgia. It's knowing that those grandkids will always have that memory of doing that with their grandparents. And again, invoking those memories and responses can go a long way. The next P is platforms. And so in today's day and age, we have many, many options for what types of platforms we want to help tell our story. And so, what tools do you have in your toolbox? And when I talk about tools, I'm talking about, again, the smartphone. There are many social media apps. Which ones are you on? Which ones are your customers on? There are also many applications that can help you in storytelling, things that help you edit pictures and add text to pictures and make short videos. All those things should be in your toolbox. Um, there's a lot of options. Make sure that you do one or two as far as the social media go where your customers consume their media. And so are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? I mean, the list just goes on and on. And it's very difficult to do many, many social media platforms and do them well if it's not your full time job. And so, as farmers, again, I know we're busy. And so, think about the two, maybe three platforms that you have in your toolbox. And then, how can you use those to tell your story? And again, we want to think about making sure our content matches the platform. So, for example, if you're on X, well, that's mainly text, some images and videos too, but a lot of it is text based. When we look at things like Instagram, that really started out as more image based. And so keep that in mind. And then, of course, if we get into TikTok, that started with short videos. And so making sure that the type of content you're creating is matching the different platforms that you're using to tell your story. And of course, as Dora says, every platform has a slightly different audience. So you should have a couple of story angles, and it depends on which audience on which platform and how you're going to tell that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, of course, we want to have that customer connection and engagement. And you can do that with things like trying to get them to like it, trying to get them to share comments, trying to get them to share your post with others. Maybe you have some kind of a product that you're selling and you have, show us what you do with our product, post an image in our on our social media page. All those things can help drive that customer engagement. And then we want to talk about personnel. And so, again, the goal is to create those connections and engage your customers. And this was a really interesting example here that Dora shares that says this is actually a Farm Bureau publication, the Furrow, which has been in publication since 1895. So again, that shares that brand's legacy. And then we look from here the image on the left to the image on the right, which is a modern farmer, woman farmer, which I'm sure in 1885, when this publication began, they didn't necessarily feature those women in their publication. So again, think about how you can share that impression and information with your customers. And again, an example like this that's been around for a long time just shows again that legacy and how long that business has been around serving their target customers. So when we talk again about the personal, it's knowing who your target audience is and what is it that interests them. And so, what do they value? What do they need? And how can you solve the problem or fill the need? And so, when we think about, if we go back to this example of this John Deere example, early on it was very probably text-based, as you can see, and in my opinion, probably focused a lot on production and how John Deere could make you more efficient and effective as a producer. Where when we go to this image on the right, John Deere is still saying we can help you be more efficient. Look, she's talking on a radio, so she doesn't have to leave the piece of equipment while she's working. Um, and so it carries that message through the efficiency aspect of this particular brand. And so, what are those storytelling items, aspects that you want to share with your customer? And again, it depends on who that customer is and what they value and what they need, and then how can you fill that need. So when we talk about best practices of the 5 Ps of storytelling, we get to the implementation stage. And again, storytelling has been around since the beginning of time, but it can also be difficult. Um, Not everyone's a good storyteller. My mom was a wonderful storyteller. I didn't get that so much, so I have to work a little bit harder at it. But here's another framework that you can use that every story has, right? It's a once upon a time. So what beginning story do you want to tell with your customers? And then what is kind of that everyday thing that takes place on your farm or operation? Oh, and then one day. So the example that comes to my mind is um, been living on a farm, years ago. Most everybody lived on a farm. They did some crops. They had a little bit of livestock, not only to feed their family, but then to sell any excess that they could. And they did that for how many years? Every day. And then one day somebody had an idea. I'm going to add this. Maybe it's a new product. Maybe it's an agritourism opportunity to the farmer operation. And by adding that one thing, what happened? because of that one thing, you can tell the story that this happened. And then because of that, what's the next thing that happened? Until finally, what's the next thing? And so part of the thinking about this framework here is this is an ongoing way to set the stage and tell your story. But I think a lot of times we jump right into the then one day, and we forget sometimes about the once upon a time that our customers, I think, would really value. So it's certainly something to think about when you're telling your story. And so, again, when we think about implementation, who are your characters? Again, is it you? Is it your family? Is it your employees? Is it your customers? Is it all of the above? But who are those characters in your story? The other thing that you might think about being in agriculture is maybe your animals or an animal are your characters or one of your characters. Some friends of ours that farm, um, they have some miniature donkeys. Now, they don't have the miniature donkeys to make a profit on the farm. It's really, they're more just like pets. But I love seeing information about those farm characters that they have. And again, it keeps me tied and engaged with that particular farm. Again, we need to think about the place that the story is happening and why that is important. And has it been the same for decades and decades, or has something changed? Um, Excuse me, I have a typo there. And then you want to think about the images that reflect your brand and your story, and make sure that you're putting out those images that support your story. And really think about those images from your customer's point of view when you're sharing those. And then again, why do your customers care? And it comes back again to what do they value? Is it that memory trigger that we talked about earlier? What are the emotions that the customers have when they see images and hear your story? And again, where do your customers consume your story? On what platforms? And that can all help you write your story and deliver that story in an effective manner. Here's just a couple of examples of a couple videos that you can watch. This first one, I just simply Googled the top videos of 2024 at this point, and it's fairly long. I'm not going to show it here. But if you look at that video, there's lots of babies, there's lots of animals, there's lots of laughter. And so think about if those are the top videos, how can you tweak some of those or some of that content? I think, laughter is always contagious. And so, are there ways that we can have a sense of humor when telling our story? Um, the second link is actually a video that we have on our Facebook page. And then this happened years ago. One of our customers was pulling in our driveway and said, "Oh, there's a big snapping turtle down there laying eggs." So, of course, we documented the snapping turtle laying eggs. And then we were able to catch those eggs hatching. And there's a short little video. So that kept our customers tied to us over a number of months because they wanted to see those baby turtles. And so that I know is kind of a rarity, but if you raise livestock, you have some opportunities there as well. As I mentioned, here are some references for information that I talked about today. The 5 elements of storytelling. I encourage you to read that article. It really has a great example that it talks about with this Lego campaign. Now, the one thing I just want to mention is that we have small businesses, small farms. We don't have the type of funding that a large corporation like Lego has, but we can take some of those tactics and tweak them to fit our situation and be very effective with that storytelling. And then again, here's another link to this about that in the beginning, that other framework for storytelling that I hope you can find helpful as well. So I hope you think about who are those characters in your story and what is the story that you want to tell? What is the story that your customers are interested in? And then what are some of those tools and tips that you can use to implement that storytelling and encourage that interaction and connection with your customers? I appreciate your